All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hockey fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike. You now ride the Red Straight Up Thought. It's time to talk about the NHL Power Rankings, abbreviated edition, and then we're going to get into what I think is the best playoffs in all of sports, the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm going to go round by round, similar to how I did the NBA. Let's not waste any more time. The playoffs start in about 12 hours or so, even less when this finally drops. Let's get to business. Vancouver, Chicago, Calgary, New York Rangers, Toronto, Florida, Seattle, and Winnipeg. So for Vancouver, you were mercifully allowed to end your season. It was a good way to go out. At least you went 4-6 in your last 10, so you weren't completely awful down the stretch. It's just the fact that your season's finally over. What do you even do with Elias Pettersson and the era that you're trying to build? What do you even do now? I guess is the question they ask for the Canucks. For Chicago, okay, you've been terrible in the last few years, but you're kind of supposed to be. Yet we haven't seen that jump that so many other teams were supposed to make with potential generational talents. We saw San Jose make a jump from being really terrible to, they got Macklin Celebrini, and he had an absurd year. And Will Smith had a good year, though he had injuries. But for Chicago, what do you do? How do you make that next splash and jump into the next tier of, okay, you're on a come-up now? For Calgary, the goaltending is excellent. The secondary pieces, not bad. Can you get a primary piece? And how do you build from what you've got in net and build outward? What do you do here? The Rangers certainly can't be worse next year, right? I mean, it's been a miserable last 2 years for the Blue Shirts, and they also have an outstanding goalie, and they obviously have an aging core led by Mika Zibanejad, who seems to own Xfinity Mobile Arena, and a few other pieces. Though I will say this about the Rangers. Their kids played well down the stretch, and their kids played a lot down the stretch as well. They really handled theirs. What happens with the Rangers now? Do they go all in with the kids, or do they try to roll with Zibanejad and Adam Fox and Shesterkin, who obviously you keep Shesterkin, but what else do you do with the Rangers going forward if you're them? Toronto's another team at a crossroads, and it could get worse. If they fall even one spot in the draft lottery, that pick goes to Boston. And their situation is really dicey because they may not have their pick this year with Boston. They may not have their pick next year with the Flyers. They owe some draft picks to those two teams going forward. Sure, they got a first back in the Nick Waugh trade, but Toronto had a disastrous season and a year where they couldn't afford to have one. You really wasted a really good year from William Nylander as well. That really sucks. He was awesome for a lot of this year. It felt like every game he had, he scored goals. For Florida, I think you're the NHL's version of the Indiana Pacers, where it's, all right, it's a gap year. You had some injuries. All right, we'll chalk it up to that. If you miss the playoffs next year, then we got something to discuss. But in the meantime, between time, just get healthy, Panthers, and figure it out from there. I think Florida's going to be right back in playoff contention this time next year, if not back in them. For Seattle, where's the top-heavy talent? And I really am concerned about what they are going to do from here. And, okay, fine, the expansion draft, all the expansion stuff, and they weren't able to have the jump start like Vegas did. Okay, understood. But I do wonder if Seattle will take risks similar to what the Golden Knights did, and making that happen, they can get said talent. What does Seattle do here? They also have good goaltending, but I just wonder where else are they going to get their production from offensively? And does Shane Wright take that next jump next year? And for Winnipeg, we've already seen it. Connor Hellebuck is not happy with what's going on. I guess I don't blame him, to be honest. He is arguably the best goalie in the world, and I guess you can say he is because of the gold medal performance. Stop wasting his talents. Winnipeg, what are you going to do with building around the best goalie on the planet and Mark Scheifele, who had another spectacular year? What are you going to do, Winnipeg? Do you completely drop the nuke, or do you try to go all in and build around those two guys in the true north? What do the Jets do? Next up, we're going to go to the UK Pacer fork in the road tier, or monkey's paw tier, if you will. New Jersey, St. Louis, San Jose, Nashville, Detroit, New York Islanders, Columbus, Anaheim. Now, the latter three teams here I'm going to get to in a sec because they all have their stories to tell and none of them are good. For the Devils, another non-good story. They were bad and at times, not named Jack Hughes, pretty unwatchable. And though the Hughes trio goal and mission, 2/3 of it was complete, I just don't know where the Devils are even going to go here. Nico Hischier is a good captain. I guess the question is his clock ticking in terms of him staying there? They got Florida's right-hand man as their new general manager, and we've seen how the Panthers have done business over the last few years in building a Stanley Cup contender and potential dynasty. Maybe the Devils can do that again. I guess we'll see about New Jersey. For St. Louis, it ended strong. It was a really bad start, and I guess you could argue 3/4 of the season. It was a decent end, which is fine. I just wonder where the Blues can get that high-end star. Is it possible that they can get lucky in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes? I guess we'll see. And I do like what St. Louis, how they played down the stretch. It just wasn't anywhere near enough to deal with a division that was absurdly great. In the case of San Jose, you have your A1 star and Macklin Celebrini. He's spectacular. You have his right-hand man and co-star in Will Smith. All right, cool. Misa looked like he could play and did some things that were solid. Understood. The defense needs to improve. The goaltending obviously needs to improve to some degree. I think San Jose could be up to something if they can build around Celebrini and Smith. If so, and Will Smith could take another step forward. If so, the Sharks may have something. They were in the playoff race for a lot of this year. They just faltered at the worst possible time. In the case of Nashville, you were the opposite of San Jose, where you guys were awful for the better part of this season, then went on a tear, and then obviously, unfortunately, like the Sharks, got ice cold at the end. And that really stings because it looked like Nashville was really going to rise from the dead and get into the playoffs, which, let's face it, after the Central 3, it was a fairly weak field in the West. Anyway, for Nashville, UC Saros still doing his thing, and obviously the main core guys, led by Philip Forsberg, pretty good pieces. It's just they started incredibly slow, and if they were even remotely decent to start the season, Nashville's in the playoffs right now. And now we get to the disaster zone area of these power rankings, at least in the Monkey's Paw tier. Detroit, yikes. That was a ugly, painful way to lose and painful way to drop out of the playoffs, where a couple of months ago, they were amongst the top in the East. They were looking like a Stanley Cup contender. Their high-end offense was doing their thing. But what happened here? They were absolutely brutal when you absolutely couldn't afford to be. And it's a shame considering what Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond and Patrick Kane and company were doing when it came to putting the puck in the net. Like, they were absolutely cooking. This was just a disaster class of a way to end the season for the Red Wings. And their fan base is down very bad. If you see reaction videos for the Red Wings fan base, it is ugly. It is such a brutal way to go out. And Anthony DeBrincat was also excellent, by the way. He should also get his flowers. He dropped a 40 bomb in terms of goals. For Steve Yzerman, how much time does he have left, to be honest? Because the Yzer plan of rebuilding and then kind of finding odds and ends around the kids who are now really solid vets now. What happens here? Where does he go from here, Steve Yzerman wise? Where does he go to try to fix this? Does he go wholesale changes? Does he blow it up? What happens here? I guess that is the important question because they can't keep going like this. And now that the Sabres are in the playoffs, the Red Wings are the holders of the longest drought of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I can't believe it's been 10 years since they've made it, and it's or 9 years since they've made it. And that is saying something considering the legacy that Hockeytown built over the 90s to 2000s and 2010s. Kind of brutal. Speaking of brutal, the Islanders. Yeesh. Another one that was awful. Another way that this was a disastrous end. How bad was the Islanders' version of it? Unless they played a tanking Maple Leafs team, they didn't win this month. I am not joking. They had no wins this entire month against non-tanking teams. The Maple Leafs was a free one. Everybody else, they got cooked and they got worked, and it was awful. And it was so bad to the point where Patrick Waugh got fired and Peter DeBoer stepped in as the new coach, and I think he just did it too late, to be honest. And then it didn't affect not a thing unless you were playing the Leafs this month, and that's why the Islanders bowed out of the playoffs. And Island fans are super salty that they're out and the Flyers are in. But y'all can cope later. Y'all deserve to go out like this. If y'all can get a win that mattered, that's what you get. And there you go. That's why you're out. It's a shame, too, because you wasted an excellent rookie season by the eventual Calder winner in Matthew Schaefer. You also have Matthew Barzal, who continues to play at a high level. And then you have an excellent goalie in Sorokin. So you have three guys that you are absolutely capable of building around. But this was a disastrous way to go out. And I guess the question is what happens to Anders Lee and what happens with how you're going to build around these three guys in general. You've got pieces, though, and you got a good, stable way of hockey to suffocate teams. It's just the scoring. Can you get enough of it when you need it next season? That's going to be the question, I think, for the Islanders. For Columbus, it's kind of a shame that they bowed out the way they did because they didn't super crumble like Detroit did or like the Islanders did. Instead, this was a slow, painful crumbling for the Blue Jackets, where there was a time from the Olympic break till March, like mid-March or so, they couldn't be stopped. And like they were steady getting points. Maybe they just got hot at the wrong time. That could be the case here for the Blue Jackets. And then once they ran out of gas, that was it. It's a shame, too, because Zach Werenski had a brilliant year, and it felt like he was on the ice at almost every critical moment that the Blue Jackets had down the stretch. He was proving himself to be a high-tier defenseman. He probably doesn't win the Norris, but he should get votes, and he was tremendous for a lot of his play. He actually led the team in points. He 81 points. He was tremendous this year. Franz Hilly is going to be a restricted free agent. Does he get offer sheeted by Columbus? And after what Rick Bowness said at the very end of the season, which is incredibly scathing, where does Columbus go from here? How do they build around Werenski and company? What do they do next? And who is not going to be in this new culture that Bowness is going to try to rebuild in the capital of Ohio? And then there's Anaheim, who is the only playoff team not in one of the top two tiers. And it's because of the way they ended their season. They ended kind of badly at a 2-6-2 clip in the last 10. It was just not looking great. As great as they were for the majority of this season, the fact that they did not win the Pacific is actually, honestly, a little disappointing. Carter Gauthier had a brilliant season, no question. He bagged 40 goals. He looked tremendous. It's just kind of disappointing that the Ducks didn't win the division after how great their season was. And the fact that they got tracked down by the Oilers and the Golden Knights, that's a really disappointing way to end what was a very good rebound, return to form kind of season for the Ducks. Joe Quenneville should get some Jack Adams votes, no question. Good coaching really does wonders for you, and it's another side note. The fact that they're in the playoffs a year after trading away John Gibson, finally, that's pretty wild too, to be honest. The fact that they so far are winning that trade in terms of on-ice production is kind of disappointing. And it's also telling about how bad the Pacific Division was. Anyway, Anaheim is in the playoffs, though, so at least there's that. It's just the fact that how they got there is not great. Now we're going to take the California Zephyr to playoff tier. Ironically, going from Anaheim in Monkey's Paw tier to Los Angeles starting out in the playoff tier. The next teams in here are Washington, Edmonton, Utah, Vegas, Boston, Ottawa, and Pittsburgh. So for the Kings, it's fairly simple. Overtime saved you, absolutely bailed you out, and got you into the postseason. Good on the Kings for that. Good on the Kings for making sure that Anze Kopitar will at least end his career in the playoffs. Good on you for that. Will the injuries catch up to you? I guess that's a huge question, and you have an incredibly daunting mountain to climb, pun intended. You'll have to deal with an avalanche warning coming up in these playoffs, but we'll get to that later. Good on you for making the playoffs, though. Washington, as well as they played down the stretch, however, 8-2 in their last 10, they did not make it, and that's a little disappointing, obviously, for Caps fans, and for fans who just wanted to see Ovi get in the postseason. And for Alexander Ovechkin, who's still playing at a relatively high level. I guess the question is simple. Is this it? With the way he kind of waved off the Penguins, like, no, I don't want to shake your hands. And obviously he was thinking that, oh, he's going to see them next week, or in this case, this weekend. And that just didn't go down. I do wonder, is this it? I do love the tributes that both Pittsburgh and Washington were giving for those Caps Penguins home and home games, back to back days. I did love those tributes. And I did love the flowers that Alex Ovechkin was getting. The greatest goal scorer of all time may have seen his last NHL game, which is always disappointing to see, but understandable if he wants to go home and play hockey for the last couple of years. In the case of Edmonton, I'm actually incredibly impressed that they are here where they are. Not only in this spot in the playoffs, but the fact that they have home ice in round one. I'm actually very impressed with how Edmonton did this, and the fact that they were able to do this without Draisaitl. Sure, Connor McDavid went God mode because he usually does that, but the fact that it wasn't just him to get them into this spot, that's impressive, and that's saying something. Fortunately for the Oilers, they're not going to be without their second best player for too much longer, because on Monday he was with the team on the morning practice, and it feels like he is going to be back during this series, which I think is going to be terrifying for everybody else because of how well Leon Draisaitl tends to play in the postseason. Does Edmonton have another run in them, no matter when Draisaitl returns? And it seems like it's inevitable that he does. In the case of Utah, again, proud of you as well. Proud of how Utah has made a jump finally into the Stanley Cup playoffs. We've seen them, formerly known as the Phoenix Coyotes, had to toil and tank and get bribed to take some bad contracts over the years. But maybe the chickens are coming home to roost, if you will. Clayton Keller and company are doing their thing, and that home ice advantage that Utah tends to have, not looking too bad. The Mammoth is S tier. We've already established that. But it still feels like a bit of a learning experience year for Utah for now. And that's a good thing, at least, because progress is being made. Proud of you, Utah. For Vegas, another kind of sort of all-in year in the sense that you got a bunch of vets and you got no reason or really resources to rebuild with them. And with the Golden Knights, all right, cool. How healthy can you be? How healthy can you go for a playoff grind that you guys know all too well? It seems like, with the exception to last year, the Golden Knights have one of two outcomes. Either it's a very short run, or they're making a deep run at least to round 3. Except for last year, which they finally had a second round exit. Golden Knights, where do you go from here? What happens next? For Boston, it feels like the last of the true kind of sort of contenders, at least the lowest of them. And I would say this because of the way they finished their season. It was looking real dicey and real sluggish. Pasternak, obviously excellent. Really good secondary pieces, geeky especially. But with the case of the Bruins, they're just on the wrong side of the bracket, really, because the Atlantic Division is absolutely barbaric, as it normally is. But there's some new players in this game when it comes to how barbaric this division is. They're fourth in this division with 100 points. Absolutely insane. They would be second in the Metro if they were in the Metro instead. That's how diabolical the Atlantic Division is, where two 100-point teams are going to be out in round 1, guaranteed. Diabolical division. One of those teams could be Ottawa, as the Senators also end their season relatively strong. And that's good to see from a Senators team that, okay, it was looking real dicey for a while, but last month or so, they got it together. Brady Tkachuk has looked good, and Giroux and company have looked good. The kid, Stützle, has looked solid. Never mind the awful idea. We're not going to call that a rap. We're going to call that an idea that circulated and has gone viral on Twitter and IG. Never mind that terrible idea. It's awful. Don't do that. It's got the hockey world basically hoping that the Hurricanes beat them in 3. But the Senators on the ice look fine. Just don't listen to that rap. Don't watch that terrible idea. It's not even a rap. It's a terrible idea. And for Pittsburgh, you also ended the season a little dicey, and some of it because of a free win you gave the Capitals for Crosby and Malkin not playing, and then you actually tried to beat the Capitals the next day and got rolled, and it didn't look good down the stretch. You lost 3 straight, and it looked a little sloppy and sluggish. Okay, cool. And maybe part of that's because they were able to rest guys, like I mentioned, the Washington game, or B, they didn't really need to win because they had enough of a cushion for second in the Metro and could afford to chill out with their four main future Hall of Famers. Now, can the Penguins turn up the gas? That's going to be the question. They're going to have no choice because leading off the VSOE title tier is Philadelphia. And ahead of them are Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Montreal, Buffalo, Dallas, Carolina, Colorado. For the Flyers, the kids are growing up, and they're growing up fast. And it's been an incredible run of form where only the Sabres were hotter when it came to ending the season over the last month and a half. They've been absolutely absurdly great. Actually, this is since the winter break. They've been absurdly great since the Winter Olympics. That's how good the Flyers have been. And imagine if they didn't have an awful January, where if their January was even remotely decent, they would have challenged the Hurricanes for the Metro win. That's how good the Flyers have been lately. It's been a mix of Vladar, it's been a mix of Florister coming back, but it's really been everybody. It's been a total team effort. The special teams are still not very good. Well, at least the power play isn't. But it's been a very good team effort for a Flyers team that needed to make some progress and finally did. Great work by Philadelphia. For Minnesota, you've stayed the course and you've been pretty steady. Good. You are third in a barbaric division. Okay, also fine. And ready for a blood feud that's coming up in the Western Conference. Basically, the Western version of the blood feud series. Good. We'll get to that in a little bit with Minnesota. But a decent end. For Tampa Bay, somewhat sluggish. But again, your spot was kind of locked in. Okay, fine, cool. You got a little bit of help from the Flyers who beat the Canadiens and cost them a chance at having home ice in round one. Okay, good on you. You got some help there. You're welcome, Tampa. I guess from Flyers fans. But in any event, the Lightning still ended strong. Nikita Kucherov probably wins the Hart Trophy. It's him or McKinnon to me at this point. But it's good on you, Tampa Bay, for ending the way you did and ending relatively strong and healthy. You'll need it because of the team you're going to face in Montreal, who's ridiculously good and has been very hot for most of the last couple of months. Suzuki with 100-plus points. Cole Caulfield has been ridiculous with scoring goals, a 40 bomb. It's been tremendous work by a Canadiens team that's getting help and got depth and got physicality, and it's going to probably be a physical series because these two teams are prone to taking penalties. I'm expecting a lot of power plays. Can Montreal deal with Vasilevsky? I guess is going to be the question we'll get to in a little bit. Buffalo, welcome back to the playoffs. Congratulations, boys. The last time you were in the playoffs, there were only 30 teams in the NHL, and now there's 32. Okay, cool. And one of the two new guys won the Stanley Cup, which is kind of wild, but it happened. Anyway, the Sabres are back, and they won a division. Good on you, Buffalo, for doing that. There's been some really good hype videos for the Sabres in terms of making the playoffs and what it means to that city. I'm proud of the Sabres for doing so. And now Buffalo's going to be tested with Boston, but at least for the first part, you're in the dance. Let's see what you got now that you're in there. For Dallas, the blood feud is coming, and it's been pretty much set in stone for the last 2 months that they were going to play Minnesota round one. And I was a little nervous about the Stars with the way they were playing up until recently, but it seemed like they got their act together. All right, good. You're relatively healthy, too. We'll see when Jack Oettinger shows up in the playoffs, and we'll see if his coach wants to rip his head off, because that's also in play. Anyway, Dallas, showtime, go time. Let's see if you can finally break through because you guys have been struggling so hard to get out of the conference final where you guys have been the last 2 years where Edmonton's showing you the door in both instances. For Carolina, that's another team with a sense of urgency that's got to have it now because what do you do if you don't get it this time? Number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and you've been really as steady as it goes. Yes, you got a good draw being in the weaker division in the East, sure, but you've handled it, and you've handled it well. Good on you, Carolina. Your depth is ridiculous. We already know that. But you can only have so many times at it without actually getting it done. And fortunately, your boogeyman, Sergei Bobrovsky, is not going to be around to stop you this time. Will anyone else stop you? Could it be the President's Trophy winners and the team that's been the best team all year in the Colorado Avalanche? Nate McKinnon, I think, is the only real challenger to Nikita Kucherov for the Hart Trophy. Kel McCarr is amazing, as we know that. Landeskog is healthy. Great. They are coming in full bear and full bore. They may have to deal with their boogeyman in round two if both teams get there. But that's a round two problem. A round one issue is coming up in a little bit with the LA Kings. Before we get there, we're going to get to the awards for this season that I think will probably be given out. I've kind of hinted at the Hart Trophy win, but I'm going to give you the major awards when it comes to the NHL this year. Art Ross Trophy's already been given out. That is Connor McDavid, who had the most points in the league, 138 of them. He had 90 assists. Ridiculous stuff with 48 goals. The Rocket Richard goes to Nate McKinnon, who had 53 goals. Good on you. That's the most goals in the league. The William Jennings goaltender award, goals against. That's the Avalanche duo. Good on you for Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood. And the Hart Trophy MVP, like I said, I think it's down to Kucherov and McKinnon. I would probably go McKinnon, but I completely understand if it went Kucherov for this award. Both of those guys have won it before. The Calder Trophy is an easy one. It's Matt Schaefer. He's going to easily win this award. It's not going to be that very close. The Norris Trophy for top defenseman. It feels like this could be Rasmus Dahlin's award to lose, even though I would give some flowers to Zach Werenski, who had a really spectacular season for Columbus. And Kel McCarr will probably get his love too. And Dahlin's probably going to win it. And then when it comes to the Vezina for the best goalie, Vasilevsky probably gets it, even with the unfortunate with Shesterkin and Hellebuyck both missing the playoffs. Werenski seems like, and Bobrovsky too. Werenski's effectively the last one standing in terms of like the top tier of the top tier goalies. So Vasilevsky probably gets this one as well. So, but there you have it. That's my prediction for the NHL awards here. And now let's get to the hardest trophy to win in all of sports, the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's talk about it. Buffalo, welcome back to the playoffs. And your first team back, the Boston Bruins. Yeah, have fun, boys. The Bruins also had 100 points in what was a barbaric division, as I mentioned earlier. David Pastrnak has been an absolute unit. And will Rasmus Dahlin's line be able to deal with Pasta? Will his D pairing be able to deal with Pasta? So for the tail of the tape here, in terms of the season series, Boston won 3 of 4. But it's a little closer than you think because 2 of the 3 Boston wins were overtime. And 3 of the 4 games happened before the new year, the last of which was a 4-3 Boston win in overtime, as 2 of the games were actually 4-3 Boston wins. But this one happened on March 25th. So maybe a little misleading that this series went 3-1 Boston because only one of those games happened before or since even March. The big key to me, I think, is going to be the penalty minutes and how Boston is way more prone to go inside the penalty box than the Sabres are. And it's almost by 200 minutes, which is an absolutely wild stat, but it's the truth. The goaltending isn't too far apart, though I would say Boston's got the advantage with Swayman over Lyon, but it's not awful. Like they're in a decent spot, the Sabres are, in between the pipes. I do think this is going to be a fairly entertaining and relatively even series. I would say that, yeah, Boston's power play is a little bit better, but Buffalo's PK is better. And I think that's going to come into play, especially with the propensity of the Bruins to take penalties. I think Buffalo will take advantage of that to some degree. And I'm going to say it's going to be the Sabres in 6 games. I think it'll be a fun series, but ultimately one that Buffalo wins because I think they're going to be a little bit more disciplined than Boston will be. So give me the Sabres in 6. This should be an incredibly good series between Montreal and Tampa Bay. They have had some decent series over the last few years, and they even met in the Stanley Cup Finals not too long ago. Yeah, the whole COVID period that was 2020 and 2021 in the NHL, absolutely absurd. Where this was a Stanley Cup Finals rematch in this decade. Absolutely wild. The Lightning did a gentleman's sweep. I produced Game 4 of that series. Kind of wild. Anyway, this series is going to be absolutely absurd. The fact that both these teams are as good as they are, and it's criminal that one of these teams is going to go out round 1. Minnesota, Dallas, we're looking at you too. One of y'all is going to get out round 1, and it's going to be absolutely gross. Anyway, I think it's going to be an incredibly entertaining series. With the way Montreal is ruthless in terms of their scoring, with the way Tampa Bay can also be absurd, I think we're going to get some high-scoring games in this series, and this is going to be not quite Flyers Penguins animosity from 2012 and how all-time that series was. This may be one of those, considering how adept these two teams are going to the penalty box, where Tampa Bay's got over 1,200 penalty minutes. Montreal punishes you for going to the box, where they score a fourth of the time, almost, like a little over 23%, in terms of scoring power play goals. And with Tampa Bay's power play offense being led by Nikita Kucherov, you almost expect them to convert a lot, and they do. They convert the fifth of the time. So, yeah, special teams is going to be very important in this series. For tail of the tape purposes between these two teams, it's 2-all. And it kind of went like this in a very different way, where the Lightning won the first one pretty easily, but this was in December, and they also got the second one also in December, but this was in a shootout. There won't be any of these in the playoffs, thank goodness. And then Montreal came back with two late season wins, one at the end of March and one a few days later, 9 days later even, as they only allowed a goal apiece in both those two games. As a matter of fact, the loser in this game has scored exactly one goal in 3 of these 4 matchups in this season series. But again, it's 2-all. This time, I think it'll be a fun 7-game series. I think Montreal gets the job done here. I'm expecting a lot of goals, especially from Suzuki and Kucherov and Braden Point and the whole crew. Like, it's going to be a crazy series. I'm going to say Canadiens in 7. I think it'll be absurdly entertaining as we get there. We're going to go to the Metro side of the bracket with Carolina and Ottawa. And yes, I'm going to pocket the terrible idea that was shown with that rap, or idea they call the rap. It was wild. Anyway, Ottawa's back in the dance. Good on you. It didn't look great midway through the season, but you figured it out and got it right. And you got a little help there as you went along, and things are looking relatively good. Fine. Stützle has had a very good season, and Brady Tkachuk has had a very good year, and Louis Ullmark has been playing rock-solid hockey as of late. Good on you for that. I guess the big key here is how Carolina is so good at killing penalties, and they're so good at converting power plays, yet Ottawa does the latter pretty well, too. Both these teams almost convert a fourth of their power play goals. Carolina's might as well round up to 25%. Ottawa's not too far off at 24%. Good stuff here. There could be a lot of power play goals and a lot of people getting punished for the penalties. Now, these teams only met 3 times this season, and Carolina got the first 2. And then Ottawa won the most recent one, April 5th. Good on you. It was a statement win 6-3. And the winning team scored at least 4 goals in all 3 games. The Carolina wins came in February and in January, pretty much 9 days apart. Cool. That's perfectly fine. So it wasn't like Carolina doesn't have some pellets on the wall here in this series. I think with Carolina's depth, I think it's just a little bit too much. They're a little bit too battle tested. I do like how Ottawa tends to get down and tends to do their thing. I just think Carolina's got way too much depth. And in this case, despite Ullmark, I think will do all that he can to stop what is going to be a storm surge coming from Carolina. I think the Hurricanes get this done, and it's a very good and intriguing 6-game series. But we all know what time it is. This is the East Main event, and it's the Battle of Pennsylvania, the maybe most hate-fueled rivalry in hockey between not just the teams, but the fan bases. Flyers, Penguins, and I've heard it all from radio, from both sides of it this week. It's ops. It is Wawa versus Sheets. It is Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia. It's all the bridges over in the West versus all the bridges over in the East, and we got a few here in Philly. It is a lot happening here, and of 2 cities who kind of had that unspoken hatred towards each other, it seems at times, and it really manifests itself with hockey. And this is the 4th time in the last 16 years that these 2 teams have played each other in the playoffs. The Penguins won the first 2 actually this is the 5th time. 2008 and 2009, the Penguins won both of them. 2008 was a conference final. 2012, it was the demolition derby that was in that round 1. The Flyers got that one. 2018, the Penguins got the most recent meeting, and that was a 6-gamer as well. 3 of these 4 series were 6-gamers. The conference finals was a gentleman's sweep. But now this one is a brand new cast of characters, mostly for the Flyers, and a white-hot Flyer team, where other than Sean Couturier, Travis Sanheim, and Travis Konechny, they are really rolling in with a brand new cast of characters. So there's not much rollover here from the 18 team that faced Pittsburgh in that round 1. For Pittsburgh, obviously Crosby and Malkin are back, and so is Chris Letang. But they have a bunch of cast of characters too, and neither of these teams are expected to make the playoffs. In the tail of the tape for this series, it's 2-2. The Penguins won both their games easily. The Flyers won both their games in overtimes or shootouts, which obviously is not happening. And that's one thing the Flyers have done tremendously well. If they get the game to overtime, they are not afraid to drag you into the deep waters. They have been very good at games that go past 60 minutes. And when it comes to, I think, why the Flyers actually get the upset here and win in 6, it's the goaltending. I think Vladar has shown himself to be a tremendous piece for the Flyers, and low-key probably deserves some Vezina love. Does he win the Vezina? No, but I think he does deserve a little bit of Vezina love and votes. I think his goaltending is going to be the difference, and an improved defense based off how the Flyers have played over the last month and change, or last couple months, to be honest, where they have played some really good defense. Yes, Pittsburgh special teams is very good. The Flyers' power play is anemic, but I do trust that in the case of the Flyers, they'll be able to at least play a little bit more so like they've done the latter half of March and April, as opposed to the majority of the season, especially with how they played with Porter Martone coming up and how well he has done and how well he has really acclimated himself to the pro game. I think the Flyers will win this series in 6 games. I just think the overall youth and the suddenly improved kind of sort of speed that the Flyers have developed, I think are going to carry the day here. Plus the goaltending. Let's go to the Pacific Division for the next part of this playoff preview. We're going to start with the other 2 teams in orange. That would be Edmonton and Anaheim. And with the way Anaheim has been playing lately, I just don't trust it. And now you're telling me that Leon Draisaitl's coming back? That's a really bad recipe for disaster. I guess the question for Edmonton is simple. The goaltending. Can it be good enough? Because when Edmonton's absolutely needed it to be, it has not been. The tail of the tape this season is only 3 games strong, and it's 2 out of 3 for Edmonton. The last of which, and this may have determined where the division was going to go, was March 25th. Edmonton doubled up Anaheim 4-2, obviously without Draisaitl. With Draisaitl, and even without him, to be honest, I think Edmonton's just a better team. And momentum is a real thing, and in the case of the playoffs here, I think Edmonton, who has shown themselves to be battle-tested for the postseason, I think are going to get the job done. Yes, Anaheim will make this physical. I think Anaheim's going to make this chippy. Sure, they're going to be able to potentially throw hands if necessary. But ultimately, Edmonton wins yet another series in SoCal, but this time it's against the Ducks, not the Kings, and they take care of business in 6 games. Next up, we're going to go to the Golden Knights and the Mammoth. And I guess 2 of the new kids, kind of. Well, 1 new kid and 1 kid who moved. Anyway, Utah has played some pretty good hockey as of late. They've gotten it together. They've been pretty steady. Vegas has kind of been under the radar, it seems like, the entire season, where they're not the flashy, absurd team that won the Stanley Cup a few years ago and are generally seen as Western favorites. Instead, they've just been kind of just steady with Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel and Mark Stone and company. And they've just been an overall decent team. Utah actually won 2 of the 3 matchups here, the most recent of which being March 19th, a 4-0 shutout in Vegas. Good on you. The other 2 happened in November, 4 days apart, and they nearly traded identical scores. Utah ended up scoring a 5th goal as opposed to Vegas 4 in the previous game. For this series, I do think Utah will put up a fight, and I do think this series will be incredibly close. But I think the experience is going to win the day here for Vegas. Give me Golden Knights in, I think, a good 6-game series. I'll keep it short for the Avalanche and Kings. This shouldn't be much of a fight. Colorado won all 3 games in the regular season, and the way that their depth has rolled in, how good their offense has been the entire season, and how the Kings' injury issues have been such a problem over the last few weeks. Plus, yes, the Kings, similar to the Flyers, are very good at dragging you into the deep water. And what I mean by this is overtimes. They are tremendous at getting there, and that's probably why they got in the playoffs in the first place. Yes, Cope Harder, Islanders fans. Anyway, I think the Kings are going to get one in OT, and they may get one of the first 2 to make the series somewhat interesting. But Colorado, I think it's just too much and too strong. Avalanche, I think, will gentlemen sweep the Kings. I just think it's too much depth from Colorado and too much offensive punch. But the main event in the Western Conference is the blood feud. That is Big Bro versus Little Bro. Big Bro in the Dallas Stars, Little Bro in the Minnesota Wild. I love the hype video that the Stars did to kind of preview this and going through the history a little bit. And I hope that Minnesota understands the assignment and does a similar vid. I'm here for it. I love that both teams kind of sort of understand, and both fan bases, and especially Minnesota, understand the assignment that is. That's your ops. That's the ultimate ops. Let's go to work and let's go back to war. These two teams have been ready to go, I think, for the last couple of months. And we've expected this to be the 2-3 matchup in the Central Division. And it's criminal that one of these teams is going to be out round one. But I guess that's how this is going to form. And the tail of the tape in the season series, both these teams had 5-2 wins against each other in October and December. And then they faced off in two games that were 1-goal games. One went to overtime for the Wild. One went to a regulation final with the Stars. So we're talking 2-2 and an incredibly even series, which is exactly what I think is about to go down. I think it's going to be another really even series. Kaprizov and Robertson, yes, please, let's go. Let's see who's got it. Quinn Hughes and Rantanen, let's go with the defense. I think that's going to be awesome. The goaltending with Gustafsson and Ottinger, I think that's advantage Dallas, but I do think it's a good battle between the two. And this is going to be a fun series. I think this needs to go 7. I think it does go 7. Dallas slightly better, though. Give me the Stars in 7, and I could see it going to overtime in said Game 7. I kind of want it to end that way. I think it's the only way it should end. Next up, we're going to go to round number 2. I may breeze through the rest of this. With Buffalo versus Montreal, I'm going to go with the Canadiens in a 6-game series. I think this will be a fun game, a fun series. I think Montreal is not afraid to get physical, and I just don't know if Buffalo can match the offense that Montreal is going to bring them. Give me Canadiens in 6. With Hurricanes and Flyers, this could be interesting. The Flyers could drag them into deep water with the way that the kids are playing, but Carolina is just too ready for this life, and the Flyers aren't quite ready for this. Give me Hurricanes in a 6-game series that won't feel like it. I think the Flyers will steal a game that will drag it to 6, but that's as far as this goes. Flyers aren't ready yet. Carolina still is. In the Western Conference, a rematch in round 2 between Edmonton and Vegas, similar to last year. And I think this time Edmonton gets it done once again, but this is a 6-game series as opposed to last year being a gentleman's sweep by the Oilers. I think the Mitch Marner and company, I think Marner will kind of show up in the playoffs. He's kind of the NHL's version of James Harden, but I think he will kind of show up in the postseason at times. Give me Oilers in a good 6-game series here. And once again, we get Colorado and Dallas. They meet again, and it seems that every time these two teams have met in this decade, Dallas has won the day. Dallas has won the series and has brought unspeakably horrible pain to the Avalanche at various points. One was a Game 7 in the bubble, which is a classic Game 7. One was another classic Game 7 and happened in Dallas. That was last year. And one was an incredible Game 6 that happened in Colorado, where Dallas also won the day there. That game ended in overtime. Ouch. Brutal pain for the Avalanche this decade. But it stops here. Avalanche in 7, and I think it'll be an incredible series. I think it's going to be a fun series, and it'll feel like the Stanley Cup final, to be honest. But I think Colorado's going to get the job done, and I think it will be an awesome 7-game series. Eastern Conference Finals. Carolina, you're back here again, but this time the boogeyman is not in red for Sergei Bobrovsky. It may be in red in Montreal, but I think Carolina will overall take advantage of the over-eagerness and aggressiveness that Montreal tends to bring when it comes to penalties, and I think Carolina's power play is going to carry the day here. Hurricanes in 6, they go to the Stanley Cup Finals. They will face, I will say, the Avalanche, what I think will be a fun series, unlike the one they had a few years ago where Colorado destroyed Edmonton, in part because of the goaltending. Though the goaltending with Edmonton is never to be trusted in the playoffs, I think it'll be slightly better. Give me Avalanche in 6 to go back to the Stanley Cup Final. Which brings me to the two best teams, the East 1 seed, the West 1 seed. Avalanche, Hurricanes, that's my Stanley Cup Final pick. And side note, if this is the Stanley Cup Final, can we get this as the alternate jersey for a game in Colorado? Can we make this happen? I mean, this would be kind of cool to get a Whalers versus Nordiques Stanley Cup Final patch. I think that'd be kind of sweet, and it would kind of troll those in Hartford, I guess. But this would be kind of nice to get if we were to end up getting the Stanley Cup Final. Anyway, Avalanche Hurricanes, this is my final. I think this will be an incredible 7-game series. I'm going to go with Carolina finally breaking through here. I'm going to go with the Hurricanes finally getting the job done and hoisting the Stanley Cup for the second time in their history. Finally doing so with all that talent and all the depth that they've had over the years, and they finally break through. I think Rod Brindamore and his crew get the job done. Give me the Hurricanes to win the Cup in 7 games. So there you have it. That is my Stanley Cup playoff preview. And I can't wait for the best playoffs in all of sports to resume and have a 2-month war to get to 16 wins and hoist the greatest trophy in all of sports. That'll be fun. Speaking of trophies, I want to see the Spurs lift Larry O'Brien, but I've already done the NBA Finals prediction. Did I pick the Spurs to win it? You'll have to watch that to find out. And then also, the Vince Lombardi Trophy. That's a trophy that I would love to see the Dolphins lift in my lifetime. And I hope they can get closer to doing so by nailing the NFL draft. Miami, Mock, Mondays. We're in the home stretch in this series. Volume 13, lucky 13 hopefully, is going to drop on Monday. And then the last of which, 14, will drop on night 1 of the draft Thursday. That is how this is going to go down. I will do videos reacting to the picks in question either Friday, Saturday, or maybe just one super video that happens on Sunday. We'll see how that goes. But that's how the Miami Mock Series will meet its conclusion. And then, of course, the baseball power rankings will start on Monday, and then I will do that weekly. Anyway, the 11th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft will be my first stop of my next train of thought.